Okay, so this is my review of Your Honor episode 2. This episode is directed by Edward Berger and written by Peter Moffat. And remember, Peter Moffat actually wrote the show that The Night Of was based off of, Criminal Justice. And the reason I mention that here is because as this show keeps going on, it reminds you more and more of the pace of The Night Of and the similar kind of story here, and really delving into the aftermath of something that happened significant and how it affects all the parties involved. So we actually open this episode with Jimmy Baxter, played by Michael Stuhlbarg, and he's listening to the 911 call that Adam had made after he killed his kid. So what's set up well here from the top is that Jimmy Baxter has his contact in the police. That's why he's able to get his hands on this tape. This will also be the police officer that goes in hard to Kofi later in this episode. But what it also shows now is there's this crooked lieutenant on Michael's side who is through his friend Charlie, who he's helped out move up in politics. He did him a huge favor. And we see Charlie even says to Michael here, he's like a brother to him. So you already have these two police officers that are both corrupt introduced in this episode and what party they're kind of helping. But what we really see formed in this episode is the relationship with Michael and Adam, in that how they're going to handle this problem they're in now of covering up this hit and run. And we see that Michael really turns on the full Walter White here. He literally is just going into deeper lies as this episode goes on. So similar to how Walter White would do it, where it's just a snowball effect. And you're almost cringing watching because he has to talk his way out of so many situations where he's almost actually getting caught. In particular, I love the scenes he has with Detective Costello, who we meet in this episode, played by Amy Landecker, who I love in everything she's in. And she is not Kim Dickens. They look very similar, but she really gives her all here and plays really well off Bryan Cranston. They have such a great scene when she actually finds the car that he reports himself stolen to make an alibi. And it's this back and forth where you're just on your toes because she's seeing he's on guard for some reason and off. And she even says to him, "That's the first time you've called me Nancy." And he's kind of fumbling his words but talking out of it. But he's going full in here. Like, he's in full emergency mode. He's doing everything he can to protect him and his son. He even has a line to Adam here saying, "You can do this or we die." Not just Adam, both of us. So he knows the threat of a guy like Jimmy Baxter. We know the threat of a guy like a Jimmy Baxter. I mean, this guy, by the end of this episode, smashes an innocent bird to death with a golf club. And he literally says he doesn't care about anything anymore. He's completely in the deep end now after his son died. He's a complete lunatic. So clearly we can believe the character of Michael when he says this to Adam. But Michael is so meticulous. I mean, he's literally setting up a full day's alibi as if they relived yesterday with his son, going to this coffee shop, talking about the case he was working on, then brings his son to the grave, and his son is not feeling this. It's becoming, in a sense, Michael's biggest obstacle is his own son, Adam, in this. Adam is the complete opposite of Michael here. He's got a full conscience going on. He's not able to just whip this away in emergency mode like Michael is to protect themselves. Adam is just feeling guilty, and that's why it's so important we get introduced now to this story and character of Kofi. Kofi takes this job that was started up by Michael to Charlie, to his crooked lieutenant, to this head gang member who gives it to Kofi, a gang member in his own right. But what makes it so interesting with Kofi's story is that he is the son of the woman that Michael just cleared in court. So he's going from this family's hero and doing what he believes is the right thing to literally the opposite. And that's why it's so effective that when he sees it's her mother in the court at the end of this episode, that's really going to hit Michael. And it's also his courtroom that he has all this justice in and his beliefs, and he sees this judge humiliating someone like a Kofi. Kofi's clearly someone that Michael would defend and try to get not guilty in a case like this, but now he's on the other side of it. I do really appreciate, too, there's one camera shot that really stood out to me in this episode is when Michael actually got the call that the car that he reported was actually caught because he didn't want it to get caught. It was supposed to get trashed. And you see there's this insanely high overhead shot, but it's kind of showing you how small he feels in that moment in this huge mess he's in now. Just a loss of control. But that camera work is really effective in showing us angles and where Michael is and where his head is at any given moment. There's also some important lines with Michael's character. In particular, one that stood out to me was when this cop is driving him home, he brings up a case where he let this guy stealing underwear in the neighborhood let go because he says, oh, this guy eventually ended up raping people. But you see Michael's belief as a judge comes out, saying that you try a case on the evidence, not who you think this man will become. And that's interesting to me because that might be what ends up biting them in the back if they have an honorable judge on their case. Because if we're going to go on the case of the Baxter family in this accident, if we're going evidence, it's got to eventually lead to Adam here. And that's exactly what Michael doesn't want to happen. But it goes against that moral code he has as a judge. But what is he as a man? And that's what we're learning. And how he's actually going against his grain as a judge here. So it's interesting too with this character because we also meet this character of Lee, played by Carmen Ejogo, was recently in the latest season of True Detective. But he still, in all this, asked her to a glass of wine. There's something mysterious about this, and there's got to be bigger reason to this. And kind of to me hints maybe there's something up here with what was going on with his wife towards the end of her life. There's got to be more mystery to this backstory, to that family of Michaels. But he seems like he has a romantic interest in Lee. But by the end of this episode, we'll also see he's going to need her because he wants her to get him access to talk to Kofi. But what they did really well with Kofi's character is the reason why he would plead guilty is because it's showing you that he has to, or basically he's being threatened that something might happen to his family. And it's sad, and it makes you feel for Kofi. This whole episode makes you feel for Kofi, which is really effective because then it really puts you in Adam's shoes, in Adam's predicament. Because someone who's already got a guilty conscience, as Adam does, him seeing Kofi in that courtroom is really going to set it off. And obviously he's going to feel terrible about this, and that's why you get this great shot where he's actually going himself to stand in the defendant's place, really just feeling out the guilt he feels and that he knows he should be in Kofi's shoes. But it's important they showed Kofi's character with more layers than just him being a piece to move the plot where it needs to be. It's showing you feel for Kofi the whole episode in the sense of how he was brutally, basically tortured by Baxter's crooked cops here. And it shows you what Baxter's capable of and what he would really be doing to Adam. But it also shows you that Kofi is a story showing you what happens to someone who's in a poor situation, how they end up in a gang, and how there's a no-win for them because he has to plead guilty just to protect his family. So he's clearly just been screwed this whole way. So it adds an interesting third party to this story. So for a second episode, I still think this show is pretty good. It's slow. It's got that night of defending Jacob, any kind of crime story here, but it has this teal color palette. It's cold. It's depressing. It's that mood. If you're really into that, this definitely feeds that type of target audience. It does it well. This was a lot of setup here still, but it's only episode 2, and there's a lot of episodes to go. I'm very intrigued by this show so far. It's keeping me interested. It's setting up really good characters, and it's anchored, obviously, of course, by the brilliant Bryan Cranston as the lead, which gives me even more hope for where this can go. I really do think this show has such high upside. Right now, I'm going to keep it, though, around this range in the middle of 8 to 9, so I'm going to give this one an 8.7, which I think is really good for setup, and I hope it just can stay interesting the whole way. I've said in my previous review I'm a little worried that we already know what happened at the crime scene exactly, so I hope they add enough layers to keep it interesting and some kind of mystery and suspense for us to learn stuff as this goes on that we didn't know as the audience. But it looks like it's going that way. I'm hopeful in how this episode kind of made the story a little more interesting than even from episode 1. Let me know what you thought of this episode down below. I love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond to as many as I can. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of Your Honor. I'll be doing every episode. I can't stress enough how much it helps me if you subscribe. And if you want to go the extra mile and you love what I do, I'd really appreciate if you can donate to my monthly donation of $2. It's a PayPal link in my description. That will help me get to my dream of doing this full time and make more videos for you guys. I would be truly grateful for it. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.